Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Scott Groves with the On the Edge podcast. And it's funny because I'm here with my old friend but new friend, Dane Espegard. And it turns out that we've been to a bunch of the same seminars. We're in the same group called Front Row Dads. We run in the same business circles, but this is the first time ever we're going to get to have a one-on-one business conversation. I feel like I know Dane. I feel like I know the content of his book, The Dream Machine, which is a new business development book that just came out, and we're going to dive into that. And it's crazy because like Dane and I have been flirting in the same circles for about 3 years, but never actually had a one-on-one conversation. I know you're a family man. You just moved to Austin, Texas, like the rest of America is doing right now. You've run probably the most successful Cutco operation in the entire country, in the history of the country. We'll dive into what that means. But what did I miss in the 60-second Reader's Digest opening of Dane Espegard?
I mean, that's most of it. I got a 5-year-old and 3-year-old, both little girls. And then, we just moved west to Austin and exploring the city, and we have no furniture at this very moment. I have a desk, but we have no couch, no tables whatsoever in the whole house. So
yeah,
you know how that goes.
We were talking right before we came on the air. You decided to do the same thing that so many people are doing, which is, leave the departing residence, but keep it as a rental, an Airbnb, an investment, something, and then move to the new house. So are you Airbnb-ing the house you just left?
Yeah, so we're Airbnb-ing that one, and that's more of like a large, more of the, we're not going to rent it 90% occupancy, right?
Right.
But it's going really well. We're half booked right now for the summer.
Nice.
Yeah, we took a little bit of a risk, but once we put it on there, about a month after it was on, we felt pretty good about it.
Nice. And where are you moving from? And then obviously you moved to Austin, like all the other cool kids. So where are you coming from?
I always say the Twin Cities, but we're technically in Baldwin, Wisconsin. So it's like 45 minutes east of St. Paul.
Got it.
We've been there for the last 3 years. We were in Minneapolis before that.
I had a couple friends that relocated to the Twin Cities. And so I spent my fair share of days drinking at, rock climbing at, shopping at the Mall of America, and like kind of crazy, that mall that like there's 3 Gaps and 4 Starbucks, and it's
you could live there.
You could live there, yeah. I'm surprised nobody's done a movie yet, like a spoof on living at the Mall of America.
Yeah, that'd be the one for sure.
All right, so tell us about the Dream Machine. Ironically, and you don't even know this until I'm about to tell you, I went through the Dream Machine exercise with John Israel, who's a co-collaborator of yours in many areas, also still sells Cutco knives. And then my buddy, Isaac Stegman, who's also a mortgage coach, he kind of briefed me on how you went through the Dream Machine exercise or the Dream exercise with his high-level mortgage coach group. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your sales background, your management background, why you were the perfect person to write this book called The Dream Machine, and then we'll talk about the book.
Sure. Yeah. So I got my start in sales, direct sales with Cutco Cutlery right out of high school. So 18 years old, I was, going through the 3-day training, learning how to sell knives to any, married couple I could find basically. And so did that for 4 years of college while I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison, and didn't really know necessarily what like most students didn't know where I was going to end up, but really loved the culture that Cutco had and the people that I was working with. So decided to stay with them as a career role post-college. Basically, that's kind of like it's similar to a lot of other industries, but it's like a small franchise owner. So I had a territory, Southeast Wisconsin, and did that for about 2.5 years, climbed the ranks. They moved me to Omaha, Nebraska as a division manager. Was there for about 4 years, then up to the Twin Cities. And that's what my territory has been since. We, with COVID, have switched everything to being virtually. So now that allows me to kind of, live in a different area. But my territory with Cutco is Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and a little bit of Nebraska and Wisconsin as well.
So we've had, ironically, because the business circle I got entrenched with Hal Elrod and John Berghoff and John Vroman and Chandler Bolt and all these guys, we've had them on the episode, and I've made the joke like, oh yeah, all my friends come from the Cutco world except for me. But can you explain just at its core what Cutco is? Because you'll talk to some people and they'll be like, oh, it's the greatest opportunity a young man will ever have in business. And you'll talk to other people and they'll be like, it's a multi-level marketing pyramid scheme. They're ripping kids off. And so can you explain what the opportunity is and what is Cutco?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you asked. I think that's a great question. As I've been doing like let's call it the new age book tour, right? Instead of like going to bookstores, like doing the podcast tour. This question's come up a lot. Like, what's in the water at Cutco? I've been talking to so many different entrepreneurs that got their start there. I think a lot of it has to do with, the timing. So Cutco Vector Marketing, we recruit a lot of 18 to 22 year olds, right? So it's kind of that. Those are super formidable years. We have people that don't really have any prior sales experience. So this is their first opportunity with entrepreneurship, sales, rejection, making calls, learning how to influence, give a pitch. What do you do to handle an objection? So there's so much baked into the cake of what somebody's just regular experience is. Let's say a student spends a summer with us, they get all of that. They also get the whole like, I want to quit every week. Okay, fine, I'll keep going. The whole back and forth that all entrepreneurs go through, or anybody in sales. So they get that. I think the other piece of it though is that at a young age, they're massively introduced to personal development. And so for me, my parents we were middle class, but I wasn't necessarily given resources such as podcasts or books or seminars. And so at Vector, all of a sudden I was having this real world opportunity to make phone calls, get rejected, get wins, hit sales goals, do that. But at the same time, somebody was, kind of narrating or quantifying my experience for me through the world of personal growth. So I think a lot of people that leave Cutco get hooked on the personal growth, and then, their trajectory is to the moon basically. And like a Hal Elrod or anybody else that, and they really can take that experience and go so many different directions with it.
Yeah, I think about how much different the trajectory would have been of my life if I understood at 21 what I started to learn at 31. Because at 31, after the mortgage markets crashed and I had to find a way out of it, it's like, oh, you find coaches, you find mentors, you find personal development books. When you're suicidal because you've lost all of your money, and the entire world says, oh, look at that mortgage people, they almost crashed the world economy. That's a time to either crash and burn or reflect and get better. And I'm like, shit, had I had coaches and read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was 21 instead of 31, like I'd be retired. I'd have FU money and I'd probably be, running triathlons and my wife would love me more. But most adults, if they ever find that stuff, they find it in their 30s, their 40s, or their 50s. Right. So, I'm sure there's some valid criticism of taking a bunch of 18-year-olds and throwing them into the deep end of the pool and trying to get them to sell knives to family and friends and coworkers. But I mean, the value that can be obtained from like getting some personal development exposure and some sales exposure at 18, 19, 20 years old when you're going through college or you're right out of high school, like just feels invaluable to me for a lot of these kids. Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing I was going to pile on with it is that all of it revolves around, and it is possible because the product itself is fantastic. If the product wasn't great, then it would be hard to say to somebody, hey, go sell this to friends and family. But I remember as I was a student, I was selling to my, buddies, moms and dads, that type of thing. And 20 years later, it's like, they still use this stuff. They still call me to get new stuff. And so knowing even a student who spends one summer with Cutco, those customers are going to love that product for, the next 30, 40 years of their life.
Dude, I have a $1,700 block of knives in my kitchen. Yep. And if the house started to burn down, it would go kids, important paperwork, guns, the block of Cutco knives. Cause that's the only valuable thing I have in my house. That's going to last forever. So the shit actually works.
Yeah. And the guarantee is makes it all great forever.
So can you talk a little bit about the business model? Because obviously it's a well-made product. It's expensive. Like I said, a block of, I don't know what it is, 20 knives or something. I probably spent $2,000. So let's say $100 a knife or whatever. There's got to be a business model there where they're making an American-made quality product, which isn't cheap. Obviously, the door-to-door salesman, aka the 19-year-old's got to get paid. You, the regional manager's got to get paid. The brothers that own the company got to get paid. Like, can you, without giving away any trade secrets, can you kind of break down the business model or the percentages roughly that go where? Or is that like some super trade secret?
Well, and I was actually about to say, I can give you some insight into it, but Cutco's privately held. And so I've been with them for 20 years. I still don't know the exact breakdown of what's the markup, what are the margins? Like
Right.
there's a lot there that they do keep close to the vest. But when a brand new representative gets started, they start off at 10% commission, and then it goes real fast. So they get, most of them after they've been working a day or two, they get up to 15% and 20. And then we actually have Cutco sales representatives that do it full time as a living. Many of them, right? Yeah. Although they may do other things also.
Yeah.
But they get 50% commission on what they sell, and that's what it tops out at.
Yeah.
So my top producer, for instance, his name's Seth. He's been doing this job for 15 years. Last year or 2021, he sold $900,000 at Cutco.
Unbelievable.
Which is wild to think about, one person. He does a lot of events, fairs and shows,
trade shows.
Kind of
he'll sell $50,000 in the weekend at the LA County Fair or something like that.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. So
we have a mutual friend, and I won't share his name, but you'll know who I'm talking about. He still sells Cutco full time, and he's a professional bodybuilder. And he's like, this is the only job in the world that I've ever come across where I can work out 4 or 5 hours a day, meal plan, eat 3 ounces instead of 4 ounces of Brussels sprouts, and then go do my sales calls and whatnot. And I know, I won't give an exact number, but I know he made a very good living by Southern California standards, and Southern California is not cheap. He made a very good living selling knives, and then can go work on his supplement company and his bodybuilding and all that stuff. And I'm just like, this is just a crazy opportunity that you're still doing the same shit you were doing when you were 19 at a higher level and selling to realtors and selling at trade shows. And like, you're paying for a luxury condo in San Diego with like knife sales. It just blows my mind.
It is one of the pieces of adversity that anybody who's at that, and I know who you're talking about, that individual's level in the business, is that the second that somebody as a student comes home and says, hey, mom and dad, I got this new job, I'm selling knives. It's almost, not everybody, but it's almost immediate of, what the hell are you doing? No, that's not going to work. My dad is actually in town right now, kind of helping us get things set up from Tampa. And I remember that conversation with him when I got started. And luckily I was belligerent enough to be like, no, I'm doing this. But then the same thing happened when I graduated college. And the conversation was, okay, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I'm going to stay with Cutco. And it was, no, that was a college job. You got a degree, go do something with your degree. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And it was the exact same thing over. So anybody who's been with the company for that long has had so many of those where it's like, we joke around about it all the time. It's like, when are you going to get a real job?
Right.
And, I still haven't gotten a real job apparently, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. My favorite is like somebody making that criticism. We're like, oh, when are you going to get a real job? It's multi-level marketing. I'm like, oh, this person I'm criticizing, this hypothetical person, criticizing from a point where, oh, you mean you who went $200,000 into debt to get a master's degree and have a $70,000 a year job? Right. When I know high school dropouts that are making $200,000 peddling knives, like, give me a break. Like, at the end of the day, yeah, great. I'm glad you got an education. I'm glad you're evolved. But like, don't look down on the guy that created a little entrepreneurial niche for himself and is crushing it selling knives.
Well, and the tough thing is, we get accused, I call it accused, whatever, related to multi-level marketing all the time, right? The whole pyramid network marketing. We are not. In other words, when a representative refers or whatever, and somebody else gets it, they don't get a dime off of that. And I always joke, somebody will say like, well, you're network marketing. I'm like, believe me, if we were, I would be making way more. I've been here 20 years, and I know people that have been doing that stuff for 10, 15, 20 years. And, it's not the same. We are in a direct sales organization, not an MLM, but there's no, it's like a lot of topics in today's world. It's like when somebody has their mind made up, there's no,
there's
it's
no
like,
chance.
Trust me, I work here. I've been here for a long time, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So what's your normal, cause one of your things as a manager, and we'll get into the Dream Machine book in a minute, like casting this vision for people and helping them accomplish their dreams. What's the turnover? Like, do you have a lot of people that work for you in your region who have been there a year, 5 years, 10 years? Or is it like every summer you're recruiting a new crop of, college freshmen to go sell knives? Like, what does it look like for you longevity?
Yeah. So both. So in other words, yes and yes. So I have, turnover is a challenge that we deal with. And at first, when I was a newer manager at Cutco, I thought it was a specific to Cutco thing. And then, as I've gotten older, I've recognized like, no, that's everybody's number one issue is retention of their people. So, no matter what, our business model is, hey, we need to get a lot of people to sell Cutco, right? So we are in the recruiting business. And so winter breaks, summertime, you really year round, but summertime for sure, we are on our grind, all over the place, advertising, trying to find as many high quality students as we can. And so because of the recruiting nature, we also naturally are going to have more turnover as well. This is one of those jobs there that we don't look for experience ahead of time, because if we did, we're not going to find any 18-year-olds that have sales experience,
right?
Anything of substance. And so we are taking a chance on almost everybody. But the nice thing is they got nothing to lose, especially the job is virtual now.
Right.
So they literally are doing Zoom presentations. So they don't have anything to lose. And so it's very much hey, we look for more reasons why to hire somebody as opposed to why not to.
Yep.
And we kind of allow them to figure out if it's a job for them or not.
Yeah.
And we also have a healthy amount of individuals like on our management team, and then what we call our Cutco sales professional team, people that do it year round as a career. Those two teams are very solid and have been with me for quite a while.
Nice. And because it's contract work, I'm guessing all of your people, like we have a friend, John Israel, is welcome to run do
whatever they want,
his sales business, and also do his speaking business and take time to write a book. So even those people that get out of college are like, okay, cool, I can make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 selling knives on the side, and I can, whatever, chase my true passion or build my other side hustle. And that's totally okay.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for instance, with me, right? Like I spent time writing the book, launched the book. I've been doing stuff with that. Cutco's been the number one supporter of that. They've been all about like, hey, you do your thing. Obviously they don't say this, but the assumption is as long as I keep producing, right? Go for it.
Funny how that works in every sales organization, right?
Yeah.
They're like, Scott, you can do that cute little podcast thing and you can do that cute little coaching thing, but keep producing $10 million a month in loans, or we're gonna give you shit about your expense account.
Right. That's 100%. So, but everybody's independent contractor. I've been with the company for 20 years. I'm still an independent contractor.
Amazing.
Right. And so I like it that way though, because I'm in charge of my own stuff and I eat what I kill.
Yeah. So talk about the transition to management, and then I promise we'll get into the book, but I think this journey is relevant. So how long ago did you start managing people? How many people do you manage? I know you have this crazy record you just set at an office level, but you also like coach at divisional level. So over the last 20 years, when did you go into management? How many people have you seen come and go, and how many people do you manage now?
So the cool thing with Cutco is they give people chances at opportunities before they're ready for them. So I was promoted to be let's call it an assistant manager. And this isn't that uncommon, but somebody sells a decent amount of product. Then all of a sudden, the company, the managers will start saying, hey, are you interested in leadership and influence skills? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, cool. Get me in the fold. So as a 19-year-old, that next summer with Cutco, I started coaching and training other students. And then as a 20-year-old, did a little bit more. 21-year-old, I got to run somebody else's office. Then when I graduated college at 22, I was running my own team. That year we recruited and had about 300 individuals that were on our sales team. Right.
So wait, just real quick. At 21, you're recruiting, learning to manage, dealing with personality conflict of a couple hundred people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So that's what's great about somebody who stays in Cutco for a decent amount of time, like the amount of opportunities to learn, make mistakes, and kind of get that repetition. It doesn't take long for them to get, called a master's degree in emotional intelligence or, coaching or whatever else.
Yeah, I can tell you anecdotally, my best friend growing up, and we'll never have him on the podcast because he has no social media. He doesn't have a public email address. He's just he's a hermit. But he's worked for Citibank in mergers and acquisitions. He did 2 internships with them in college, then got a job with them. Actually, back then, I think it was still Solomon Smith Barney. Internship with them right out of college. So that would have been 2001. He's worked for them for 21 years. He's been a top producer, a slave. I mean, there's been seasons of his career where he's working 100 hours a week and learning all the ins and outs. He and a buddy just got co-promoted to this management level to oversee Southeast Asia, where they manage 220 people. And, so he's early 40s, 20 years of experience, shining star, MBA from Wharton School of Business, with the same company for 21 years. And they're just like, we're going to promote you a little bit ahead of where we think we should. And you're going to co-manage with somebody else. You'll be in charge of 200 people at this banking level, which for him is awesome, right? Like, this is the culmination of like a career's worth of work. And in Cutco, it's like, yeah, you're 21. You've been around for 3 years. You should go try to manage 300 people. That's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing testament to like what they have in place, because obviously those managers don't fail at a high level or the company wouldn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's always, not everybody is cut out for it. And so there is a retention level at that, right? But with everything, there's a cream rises to the top. And as somebody does that for a while. So, my first 2.5 years out of college, I just ran my office. And then I had the opportunity to help develop people to go out and do their own, right? Run their own office. I did well with that for a couple of years. So then they promoted me to be division manager. And then you kind of wear two hats. You've got your own office, but you're also in charge of opening a certain amount of locations. Similar, I think, to mortgage industry, where it's, I've got, hey, here's your territory. You decide how many should go in there, that type of thing. So when I was 24, I got promoted to that position. So really at 20, my first full year at that, I was 25 years old. And my division, we'd have about 500 active sales reps a year at that. And then let's see, 20, I think I was 28, 29, I got moved to larger territory. And since I've been up here, we have about 1,000 sales reps that come through the door each year.
So you're running about 1,000 sales reps. And what's the management tier? Because, if you read in the military development books, it's like, well, one person can only effectively manage 6 or 8 people.
Right.
That's why like a Navy SEAL platoon is built like it is, and military platoons or squads are built the way they are. So like, how many direct reports do you have, and what does that kind of management funnel look like?
Yeah. So there's two sides. I have the management side, and then there's the Cutco sales professional team. On this side over here, they're very independent. It's like a super seasoned, loan officer. It's like they know what they're doing. They just need to be maybe wined and dined, told how great they are, and then a couple of business plans, a year where you sit down and just, get them to think differently. Yeah. So I have a lead individual there that manages that team. So really, I'll talk to all those individuals, but I have one on that side that I'm, kind of game planning with on a regular basis. Management side is more time intensive. We have, right now we have 9 year-round offices. We'll open 11 summer, like just seasonal summer offices. We'll have 20 in the summer. Of that, I also have a veteran that helps me with those. So he's a direct report. And then I usually spend my time with the top, let's call it 4 to 7 of those. And there's always one person that runs my office, and that's like an apprenticeship for 1 year. Mm-hmm. It is extremely grueling, but they get a ton of experience from that for a year. I did that my senior year of college. So there's really there's probably, like you said, 6 to 8 that I'm in like regular conversation with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm interested because you are running. So this is going to be like sales coaching 101. I love this. Like, I can get some free coaching from you. I feel like any sales organization, you have your leading and lagging indicators. So like in the mortgage business, I've had bad managers who all they ask is like, how many loans did you fund, Scott? How many loans are you funding this month? What are you funding this month? It's like, well, in the loan business, I make calls today to develop a realtor relationship. They give me a referral next month. Those people are out shopping for a house for 3 months. They get under contract. They close on a house a month later, and then I get paid a month later. So it's like the activities I do today are not going to put money in my pocket for 6 months. So when I have bad managers in the mortgage space who are like, what'd you fund? What'd you fund? I'm like, fuck you. You're asking the wrong question. If you want to be my manager, you should ask me, how many calls did you make today? How many realtors did you take out to lunch? How many webinars did you do? Like, that's the stuff that actually fills the pipeline that leads to sales. So in your world, when you're managing that many people, what are kind of like your KPIs or your key indicators where you're like, if I just manage these 3 or 4 things, the sales all kind of take care of themselves?
So on the Cutco sales professional side, we're very events heavy. So how many events do we have? So that's the leading indicator. And so my individual, Robert is his name. He's in charge. He's got a partner in that. So Robert and John, their job is to grow the number of events that we do each year, right? So we'll meet typically in Q4 to talk about the next year. and hey, how's it look? Do we need more people on the team? How do we grow that number of events that we're going to do this next year? So that's the leading indicator on that side. When we have people that are doing the real estate program, right, where they're selling to mortgage brokers and in real estate agents and whatnot, same deal. It's how many meetings do you have that you're going to be in front of an office? And so what was it last year? Can you grow it this year? And so those are the leading indicators on that side. When it comes to the management and the office side, that is way more recruiting driven. And so when it comes to that, the leading indicators that we talk about are, there's some social media specific things, but there's a lot of how many people did you get set up for interviews, which is just like hitting the phones if you're individual sales person, right?
Right.
So the managers are doing the same thing where they're not making sales calls now, they're making recruiting calls and they're getting those people set for interviews. So we call it fire number, but we look at how many people are you setting weekly and then how many people are you having in training each week. And so those are I'm not very worried about the sales number itself. I'm worried more about, the front end numbers. And the beautiful thing with COVID, we used to do a whole bunch of in office. People had to drive to an office to attend a training seminar. So I would run the really key trainings just in my location, but we have 20 offices in the summer. Well, now we're all virtual. So I'll hop online and all 20 offices that are recruiting will send people to one training. I'm obviously the most skilled trainer because I've been here the longest. And so now I'm able to impact 100% of our recruits. I'm not coaching them, but they all get exposed to that training, which has been huge the last couple of years.
So you're the best in the world at selling that $100 pizza cutter?
That's right. Hey, it's only like $50.
$50. Yeah, I have one of them.
Yeah.
And in fairness, it is badass. I used to have a cheap plastic one and I couldn't cut through a piece of cheese. And now that metal one, perfect slices of pizza. So, you said that before we jumped on, you mentioned that your office, the all-time record sales goal for an office in Cutco was 3.7 million. You guys blew that out of the water by 4.8 million last year. And I think a lot of businesses, rightfully so, have something to complain about by suffering under COVID. If you're a restaurant in Los Angeles, there's no way around it. I don't care how you pivoted to online delivery. Like you got your ass kicked in 2019 and 2020, 2020 and 2021, if you were a restaurant in Los Angeles. And I think there's a lot of businesses that made a lot of excuses because they didn't want to pivot or adapt. And, oh, shucks, I needed a PPP loan or, I couldn't do any work because of COVID. I'm like, really? Or was that just your excuse to not do a loan? So clearly you guys found that pivot to crush it during COVID. And I know, because I know some of your other sales reps that they're like, dude, I feel bad for the people that are suffering. I'm trying to help out the people in my tribe, but I just had a record year. I'm killing it. So what was a couple things. What was the mindset going into COVID that allowed you guys to pivot with an all contract staff who was all pretty young and inexperienced? And then what was the actual pivot you made for your guys' organization to just absolutely crush it?
So there's a tale of two stories here, 2020, 2021, and they were very different for us. 2020, when it happened, not everybody, so Cutco had its best year ever in 2020. Not everybody within Cutco did. There were plenty of people that, just like you said, were like, well, the way that we did business is gone as we know it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm going to do. There's a ton of community and conversation within the company. And what's wonderful about it is it's competitive, but not in the cutthroat, like, hey, I got this answer over here. I'm not going to give it to anybody else.
Right.
So we're able to move fast with innovation in terms of, hey, who's got the hot hand? And so when COVID started, nobody knew what the hell we were going to do. At that time, 100% of what we did was in person. And so we needed to transition. Cutco corporate did a few things to kind of, with some software stuff to make it easier to go online. But then myself and every other manager in Cutco was just kind of winging it with online training to say, let's see how this thing goes. We don't really have another option. What we had that summer that we didn't recognize was a captive audience. There were no jobs available for 18 to 22 year olds. Food service shut down. Golf courses then ended up opening up, but there was a window there where we were the only show in town. And so the hungry manager who was like, hey, look, I know my training, but the end result isn't beautiful, but I don't care. I'm just going to recruit my ass off. Those managers blew up because the individual that maybe normally would have gotten rejected 3 times or 4 times and quit, but they couldn't quit because it wasn't like they had another option to go and do. So the labor market was unbelievable for us that summer of COVID. But also economically, everybody's at home, right? Weirdly, even though COVID had started, people weren't hurting yet financially, right? So buying a set of knives, it's like, you know, us and any other home product was through the roof.
Yeah,
right?
I read something where like Restoration Hardware had a record year, and not by like a little bit, like a record year, like 120% growth, because people were at home 24/7, and they're like, dude, I've really been meaning to buy that $6,000 couch.
Exactly.
And so everybody was just investing in their home instead of going to the movies, eating out, going to Disneyland. So it makes sense that people would be willing to upgrade their kitchen because they're cooking.
Yep. So there was a period there where they were cooking 100% of the meals at home, right? So that year was really interesting. The events side, like the people that sell Cutco full-time as a living, they got crushed because all those events got canceled, right? So they were able to market to their customers and they survived. Like my guy who did 900,000, 2019, he did 700,000. And then he dipped during the COVID year to about 500, but that was with like no events. That was just him marketing to his past customers. And then in 2021, events came back in like April, May. So the event side of our company took off. So the people that you know that are in full-time sales, they all had a breakout year in 2021. They did not in 2020.
Got it.
Recruiting became really hard in 2021 because there were jobs that were paying $25 an hour for an 18-year-old that's never been, in existence before.
Yeah.
And so we were in a really tough, this absolute coin flip where one summer it was like, this is the easiest thing I've ever seen. The next summer it was, oh my God, what happened to our labor market? Because we were humming all the way through March. And then right when schools were about to let out, shit hit the fan for us. And there was a lot of offices that struggled in 2021, but the individual sales representatives crushed it. Yeah. So it's it's very different between our team that I manage. We have a really strong and well-developed sales professional team. So this year they were on fire, but we also have a great manager team. So we've done well in both years.
Nice. And what does that look like for you guys to go from, 3 million to 4.8 million? That's a lot of $100 knives and $50 pizza cutters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the volume and the scale and the number of orders and the boxes being delivered, that's got to be almost running a whole new business when you go up, 30, 40, 50% in volume.
In 2020, Cutco had their best year ever, and they were challenged. But part of it though is also COVID related things. And then there was the whole US with everything shipping delays. Right. So there were a lot of challenges that we faced during that 2021 corporately, because we don't locally, we're the front end. I have nothing to do with the shipping, with the, any of that stuff. And so 2021, things kind of returned back to normal. And so there wasn't as much issue with that. But in terms of the sales side, our recruiting was pretty similar. The difference was that our top end individuals all had their best year ever in 2021.
Nice. And
it wasn't extra management at all.
You said one of your guys did 900,000 in knife sales, and I'm guessing he's one of these guys who's at a 40 or 50% split. So he made 450 grand.
Yeah. So he's at 50% split. So he's at 450, and then they have some expense. They'll pay for their own booth fee, right? That kind of stuff. But it's not. They don't have. Their expenses aren't. It's not like it's 25% or anything of what they're bringing in.
Amazing. Yeah. Man. Good. I hope he paid his taxes throughout the year. He's in for a really rude awakening in about 3 weeks.
He's a super intelligent, disciplined guy. And his wife sold 500,000.
Holy shit.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh my God. Any 19-year-old watching this right now who's like, I'm making $18 an hour rolling burritos at Chipotle. Be like, bro, go sell some knives. You can make a couple $100,000 selling knives if you're really, really good at it. You're motivated.
And what's wild now with the way the academic world is and all that, there's so many more individuals that, they're going to 1 year, 2 years of college and are like, this isn't for me. I really enjoy what I'm doing over here. And I can see these other people that are crushing it. I'm just going to take this, entrepreneurship path. And I talk all the time about, look, the whole world of I'm going to have one job for the rest of my life. That's not now. That's not a thing. And so look, if you love what you're doing, you can see a path of growth. You can see yourself earning more and developing as an individual. Stay there until you don't see that anymore, and then move on to the next thing.
And let me ask, obviously every industry has these top producers that do ungodly numbers, and you're like, well, they took the training, they have the systems, there's something special about them. Like that guy who sold 900,000 knives, he was probably going to be successful no matter what he went and did.
100%.
But the people, I always like to think about the people in the middle, because in my mind, maybe I'm like a little bit of a Darwinist, or like I'm a very much a libertarian. Like the failures are going to be the failures. The rock stars are going to be the rock stars. That's why I hate like Stanford NBA programs, because they take the richest, most successful, most connected, most smart kids in the world. They put them together for 2 years and kind of pour lighter fluid on it. And then they go on to do really successful things. And they say, see, Stanford NBA program is amazing. It's like, no, all those people are going to be amazing with or without you. So I'm always interested in the middle. Can the people who make it, I know there's a big washout on any sales job, but the people that can make it, and they can make, say, 50 to 150 grand a year selling knives, is it because they're naturally good at sales, or they just follow your systems, or Cutco has this amazing training? Like the people in the middle, do they have to be naturally good at sales, or is it just like, hey, I have a system, I'm okay with the rejections, I make the calls, and somehow I make 100 grand selling knives? Like what does that look like for the middle?
So yes, we have plenty of people that are in that middle tier that are not phenomenal at sales. And I would even say that there's a small percentage that are phenomenal at sales. And so there's a few factors that go into it. One is we have a cult following of customers. Like people love this stuff. And so many of the people that sell the most are on our events team. So they will go to a fair and show. And depending on how many people are there, I mean, you're going to get X amount of people that come by every day that are like, oh my God, Cutco's here. I didn't even know it. Let me tell you, and they just want to share their Cutco story. And those are just layups. They're super easy for the repeat customers. Now, is there a significant difference between that person and that Seth person, right? Or the Robert? In absolutely. But can somebody sell, enough to earn 50 to 150 just by being at the booth enough days? So we talk a lot about booth days, being at the booth enough days, and just having having their approaches down, and then also having a great product. Absolutely. I think the system matters. Like, does somebody have the scripts? Are they set up with success, with things that we know work? Is what you're selling a strong product, that you can back? And then the third thing is, can you hold a conversation? Can you be decent? And those to me are, and then the work ethic part. How many days are you going to be behind the booth, or how many calls are you going to make, or that absolutely would get somebody there.
Dude, we've talked to people on this podcast, from property syndicators to, effectively door-to-door salesmen, to owning payment processing, to loan officers. And it's like, it's amazing how much just showing up accounts for a big swath of it. Like, how many booth days in the mortgage business? How many realtors did you meet? Yep. In the payment processing, how many business people did you call? It's like, oh shit, you show up and you do the work and rewards come. Crazy how that happens. I thought I thought there was some secret to success here, Dane.
Yeah. And once somebody, we call it customer acquisition mode. So it's basically, depending on how large somebody wants to build their business, when somebody gets into full-time sales, I talk to them about, hey, you need to commit to a certain amount of years of customer acquisition mode. How many years are you going to grind the grind? Like, you're just going to put in the work, you're going to do all of it. And then once they reach the point where they feel pretty excited about their number of clients that they have and their annual number that they're at, then the conversation shifts. And we start business planning to say, okay, growth is an expectation in my organization. Maybe, that's, I can't say that for Cutco as a whole, but for me and what I do. And so the conversation is, I expect you to grow your business because that's the way you should do this. But let's talk about, how do you grow it, and how can you work a little bit less hours each month from this year compared to last year? Yeah. So they grind until they get there. And then I help them figure out, like, how can we work smarter? How can we pour into our top 10% clients? What can I let go of that's maybe not as worth my time, and say yes to a few other things? And I think that's really helped me retain a lot of people. And that also goes in line with the whole dreams thing, right? Free up your schedule to live life the way that you want to do it.
Yeah, it's funny. I've got a buddy, Jimmy Ferris, who won a Super Bowl championship with the Patriots, and he played like 8 seasons in the NFL. He came and spoke at one of my events, and he said the thing that's kind of uncomfortable for me to say out loud, which is what you just said, of like, he was just, I'll use the word berating, but it was in a very nice way, some of the younger loan officers. And he's like, hey guys, you guys see Scott going to Cabo and be able to live off his database and be able to take a step back and be able to fire a realtor once in a while because they have a negative attitude. he only earned the right to get there because he just was grinding every day for 11 years after 2009 to get the client database and to get us to the point where we have, residual business. Now he can be a little bit lazy or follow more of his dreams and focus on the stuff with his kids, because he put in that 11 years of grind. And he looked right at somebody and he's like, you who've been here less than a year, you don't get to have conversations about work-life balance or going to Cabo or when's the next vacation time. He's like, it was like straight out of Boiler Room. He's like, you don't get to be a piker. You got to grind and grow your database. So I appreciate hearing that from you as well. All right. So walk us through how your management style leads to the book, The Dream Machine.
Yeah. So I work with the total volunteer army, right? So in other words, everybody's an independent contractor. They could quit tomorrow without any notice. And that's the world I've lived in for my entire, adult life. And so I constantly operate from this, everybody is temporary. And I think that that's really served me as a manager. But I also look at that, I've talked about this before, but I also look at that with my relationship. My wife and I have talked about this, that, we aren't the couple that's like, hey, we're married, so that's it. If it's not good and it's irreparable at some point, then we'll talk about alternative solutions. But the way that I look at it is, she's temporarily my wife, so I better keep courting her. I better keep, upping my game, keep dating her to make sure that that's a thriving, great relationship. And that's also how I look at work, where it's, hey, if I want to keep this person, and if I like them, I'd rather have them be here for a very long time than cycle somebody else through that situation. So for me, the dreams aspect comes into like, well, what has kept me at this organization for a really long time? It's been the freedom, the autonomy, and the financial success to be able to do the things that I want to do that are going to get me excited.
You mean your dream at 15 was not to wake up every day and sell knives?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is I didn't have some burning desire in school to be like, it would be great, just some job with knives. No, I wasn't the weird kid, with some knife infatuation at a young age. I
wanted to be the best in the world to explain the difference between a steak knife and a paring knife. That's what I was thinking at 14.
So and I get this opportunity to work with a ton of 18 to 22-year-olds, and I can't tell you how stressful it is for them to feel like they have to figure out what they're going to do with their life. They're told this before they get to college, right? You got to select the right college, and then you have to pick your major. Picking your major at 18 years old is the biggest crock I've ever heard. You don't know what you want to do. You don't even know what you like at that point.
Right.
And so, what I love about the dreams thing is it changes the focus from like, you need to find a work that is your passion, to say you can pursue your passions, just figure out something that can fuel that, give you the flexibility, the autonomy, and the finances to be, and maybe the culture of growth that then can allow you to go out and pursue. And odds are, if you pursue enough of your passions personally, you're going to find a work passion that lines up with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. You mentioned picking your major at 18. I've got a buddy of mine. He's a wildly successful realtor. And we were having this conversation because he's got kids that are teenagers that are about ready to go to college. And I was asking about college and stuff. He's like, dude, I got in the biggest fight with my parents when I went to college because they were like, you got to pick your major. Like, what track are you going to be on for law school? He's like, guys, I don't know what I want to do. You guys haven't even figured out I'm gay yet. And they were like, what? And he's like, yeah, just came out of the closet to you guys. You guys haven't figured out I'm gay, and you want me to plan the rest of my life. And it was so funny the way he tells the story. I'm butchering the story, but he's like, my parents just dropped their jaw, and they're like, okay, we'll talk about your major later.
Yeah, right.
little different, but so it's funny because I'll interview people frequently and trying to figure out if they're a long-time solution or if I'm going to train them and they're going to move on. I'll ask them like, hey, what's your 3 to 5 year plan? And the deer in the headlights looks that I get are like, usually because they know they're applying for a mortgage job, they'll be like, well, I'd like to buy a house. I'm like, all right, cool. That's something you want to obtain, but like, what's the plan? And we went through the dream machine exercise with our team. And I was shocked that one of the girls that works for me, one of her dreams is to go to this bookstore called The Last Bookstore in downtown LA. You've probably seen it on Instagram. It looks like something out of Harry Potter. There's like arches of books and stuff. And I'm like, Danielle, take Monday off. Here's $100. go to the books. It's literally
awesome.
12 miles away. And she's like, no, I want to go with this group of friends, and I'm waiting till the COVID restrictions are off because I don't want to take pictures down there with a mask on. I'm like, all right, the day the mask mandate is over, you're taking the day off. Here's $200 for you and your friends to go buy some old books. And it's just crazy how few people ask, and how few people know, and how fewer people even ask their team, like, what's your dream? What are some things you want to accomplish? So how did this start to naturally work its way into like your management style?
So by the way, kudos to you for doing that right away. Cause there's so much low hanging fruit when you get into this and you start talking to your team about it. It's like, and even for them, it's like, oh, I guess this is on my list. I didn't even know about it, but it's, like you said, 12 miles down the road, I could have done this yesterday. I just haven't, right? Give myself the space, the time to do it. So for me, I was introduced to the concept by a guy named Matthew Kelly. He's an author and a speaker. Cutco brought him to a national conference in 2007. And so at that event, I made my first list of 100 dreams right at the event. And I remember it, being on fire, like, oh, this is awesome. And then I went home, looked at it maybe once or twice more, and then that was it. And we didn't do anything with it. And then 2012 came around. Back then you have your external hard drive, right? And so I was transitioning computers, and I also was getting moved or given the opportunity to have a larger territory. So I was basically moving and starting a team from scratch again. So this is my third time. And so I was trying to be more intentional about what kind of culture did I want to build. And I was going back through all my old notes, all my old material, and I stumbled on the dream stuff. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want my team to be centered around, like, we're people that pursue our dreams. And I was thinking, for me, what would keep me here for another decade, excited and engaged, and not just kind of going through the motions. And that was something for me that, I've always lived by the leadership principle of living out loud. So in other words, I knew that for this to work, I had to be kind of the example of it. So my then girlfriend, now wife, Brooklyn, and I at the time, we kind of dove into this. We made our lists. We planned out our next year, which was 2013. And then we just started living it out loud. And the first couple of years of this, I basically just helped people make their list, and that was it. But we got a lot of legs from that, where people were talking about their dreams. We had little boards in the office. People could put, call it a vision board or whatever, where they could put their next up on there. And then in 2016, 2017, we started doing retreats within our team. And so we would give people a lot of space. They'd create their list. It usually be about 200 to 300 on their list. And then they'd share it. And that's where we ended. But that started getting really tight bonds within the team, because now they're sharing their dreams publicly. And then the last iteration was in 2018, where that exact same retreat, we added a third leg to it, which was like the planning section. And that's where things really took off. And so it's basically just, hey, what are your dreams? What do you want to accomplish in your life? It's a living document. You keep editing it. You share it with some people, you steal some. And then the third piece is, okay, what are some things I can act on right now? And we found that this is just like anything else. It's that first domino, right? Where it's like, once somebody does one dream, they report back, even though it's not their job. Hey, I get a text. Thank you so much. I just accomplished a dream on my list. I share that with everybody else. That's a friendly nudge to somebody who hasn't taken action of like, I got to get back to my list. And so that's where it's been. We do these now once to twice a year within our team. And it's awesome. I've got these like unbelievable dreamers on my team that would definitely not be on my team. They would have left to go do something else. But this job is giving them the opportunity and the platform to like help them live the life of their dreams. My top guy, he's 21 years old. He turns 22 on February 1st. And he last year accomplished 74 dreams on his list. Wow. So he just bought a second property. He decided college wasn't for him. So he's doing a house hacking thing where he's got like 5 roommates in one. He's got an Airbnb in another. I mean, he's just, this year, he told me he thinks he has a chance of doing 200 to 250 dreams. And he's got over 1,000 on his list. I've got like 400 or 500. He's like the poster child for this.
So give me, because I mentioned the small dream of going to the bookstore or whatnot. Give me for this guy that you're talking about, who's like a wonderkin at 22. What's one of his smallest dreams he's accomplished, and what's one of the biggest dreams he's accomplished? Because I think when people think dreams, they're like, I want to live in Italy for 4 months, and you know, in our current environment, that costs $50,000, and it's like, and then you're 4 months where you're not making money, so it seems unobtainable. So what's like a small dream you've checked off the list, and what's a big dream?
So I think this is so important because when people do hear the dreams concept, they think like, well, I don't know if I have a lot of dreams. It's like, yeah, you do. You just are looking at dream in a different sense than maybe what we do. And so dreams are basically just things that would light you up, even if it's for a day or for a moment, things that would get you excited, things that would re-engage you in life. So we take people through 9 categories, but one that Alex, this guy just finished was singing karaoke at a karaoke bar. He's never done it. So he's got so many like firsts on his list of just like, look, I want to experience life. So if I haven't done something and he hears somebody else do it, he throws it on his list, right? I had a guy, and I talk about this in the book, that flossed for 30 days straight.
That was a dream of his.
That was his dream. I checked in with him. This was like 3 months into COVID, and he was on our events team. So I knew he wasn't doing well. And it was like a mental health check-in, right? Like, hey man, how you doing? He's like, good. I've gotten quite a few dreams done on my list. I was like, oh, that's awesome. He goes, I've golfed more rounds than I've ever golfed before. I hit my lowest score I've ever had. These are on my dreams list. I was like, that's awesome. And he goes, and I just finished flossing for 30 days straight. And I was like, and that was on your list? And he goes, yeah, I don't know why, but
yeah. So
they can be really little.
Well, you know what's crazy? I'm thinking about this in the context of long-term goals. Like, I have a dream of staying physically fit enough. It takes, if you're good, about 10 years. If you're not so good like me, about 12 to 14 years to become a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So it's like a long-term goal. I'm a blue belt. I'm 2 years in. I've got 10 years, 12 years, 15 years left on my journey. And part of that is like, I just want to stay healthy enough that I can do physical activity with my kids when they're older. So like, if I can do black belt level shit in my 50s, I'm killing it. So like, that's a long-term goal. But, you know, our second home is up here in Vegas. A short-term goal, because many of these UFC fighters are broke, and they're doing training on the side to help supplement their income. You know, you can go do a jiu-jitsu workout with a world-class guy.
That's awesome.
Who you saw fight on the UFC for $100, $150. I work out with an amazing kickboxer who used to fight in the UFC for $75 for a private lesson and $80 a month for classes. It's like, this is, if you're into like combat sports, this is the pinnacle of training. It's accomplishing a dream for $100. And it's like, the journey is so cool, even though the long-term dream is to like become a black belt. So it's just crazy how you can find these little micro dreams.
And what's interesting too, is when you start to just like, so when we do this, we get people in a certain place of just like, all right, you know, kind of abundance mindset, anything's possible. Let me just have some fun and jot some stuff down. I give people, you know, I don't know what the number is, 500. I give them tons of prompts, right? So they're hearing all sorts of different things. And so the idea is just like throw stuff down. When we get to the research stage where you start like just looking into some things, you start finding that a lot of the things that are on your list are way easier and way cheaper than what you previously thought they were. And it's just a simple search to be like, that's actually something I could do. Yeah. Right. And that's where it gets really fun. We also teach people to do the tiered things. So for you with, hey, I want to be black belt, you list out on your dreams list every one of the belts.
Right.
Right. And so call that cheating, whatever, but it's, you know, it's focusing on the shorter term ones also to get to that big. So people think of dreams as maybe just the black belt. It's like, no, all of those are celebrating, right? Are things that you want to celebrate the achievement and the journey.
One of my instructors, he has a sign on his wall in his gym, and it says, a black belt is just a white belt who didn't give up. So it's like, you just go and you put in the lessons and you put in the time and you learn the stuff, and you're not a total moron. And you'll get there. You know, you might get there faster or slower than the next guy, but yeah, a black belt's just a white belt who never gave up. And I love that. I love that saying. So talk a little bit about how, you know, because it's one thing to sit down and do the seminar and do all the notes and read the book and whatnot. And then we go back to the corporate grind, or somebody goes back to their job as a fireman and paying their mortgage and getting their kids to school. Or you go back and you're like, all right, cool. Here's the 9,000th presentation I'm going to give on why you should upgrade to the butcher block instead of the single knife or whatever. Like, how do you as a leader keep this ideal present and going throughout the year, throughout a decade? Like you said, you've got people that have worked you for a long time. They probably didn't grow up dreaming of selling knives, but this allows them to do all of the other things to accomplish their dreams. Like, how do you bring that into the culture over and over and over again?
Yeah. So we call it dream spotlighting. That's one of the things that we do. And so, for instance, anytime that something comes along my text, my phone, my email, I see it on social media of somebody hitting a dream, I'm jotting that down, and then I'm spotlighting that person at our next event. And sometimes it's not even somebody who's active with our company anymore. So I'm gonna let me find this text, but this is what I'm going to share at my next meeting. And I have this next week, but this individual worked with me, I don't know, 4 years ago. And she just sent me a text and said, I just started pulling out your book to start reading it. And I grabbed my journal from the Dreams Retreat I attended in 2018. So she hasn't worked with me in a while, to see what I wrote down. It was crazy how many dreams I've completed, ones that I would not have done if I had not gone to the Dreams Retreat. Such an awesome feeling, an awesome book. Congratulations. Thanks for writing it and sharing it with the world. So I'll share this with my team, and and I'll tell them, look, this isn't about me. The idea is you have something right now that if you continue doing it, she maybe hasn't even looked at her list, but just putting it down on paper, it's more likely to happen. And if you're focused on it, how many more can you get done? So at the next event I have next Friday, I'll give some highlights to some people that accomplished some dreams in the last couple of weeks, last month, last 2 months, whatever. The beauty of that is, and then I'll give them maybe 30 seconds to talk about it, right? Or longer if they want. But the idea is they relive the moment for a second so they feel great, right? Everybody else gets to hear them doing something cool. And then I don't want dreams to be some obligatory thing where it's like, oh, I work here, I got to talk about dreams. And so what I find is that every time that we have somebody spotlighted like that, it's a friendly nudge to everybody else, like, shit, yeah, I haven't really looked at my list. So it's kind of a natural, like, let me get my list back out. That's one. And we do that at the beginning of every single meeting that we have. That also allows me as the manager to make sure that they all know that my focus is you first and business second. And business is the vehicle for you to live your dreams. If you don't have an income, a lot of your dreams are going to be kind of hard. If you don't have flexibility, a lot of your dreams are going to be kind of hard. So we talk about how this is the vehicle for that. And then I'm very public about my dreams. And it took me a while to get there, because at first it was like, well, I think when you run your own team, or you're the boss, or you're the business owner, how'd you get there? It's because you aspired to have the life that maybe you saw somebody else have, right? But then all of a sudden, when you start getting there and you start enjoying some of those things, you get hush about them, because you know that your team, it's like, well, I don't want them to resent me. They don't have the same financial situation that I do right now. And also they don't get to make their own decision, maybe on schedule. And so what's interesting is we got to where we were at because we were pursuing a life that we were excited about. And then when we get there, we stop talking about it. And so we actually don't let other people do it. And so what I find with the dreams thing is it gives people permission to say, no, Scott, you need to talk about you living your dreams. So you've already talked to your team about it. So now you need to be vocal about, hey guys, not to boast, but in the spirit of us talking about dreams, I just want to share, my wife and I just accomplished a dream. We fill in the blank, right? And what that does is it gets your people fired up for you. And it also gives you that permission to be able to say, no, I can be open and transparent. I can be me with my team, not have to be a different person in that situation. So I find that me living out loud helps a lot.
That's so funny. This is going to be a bit of a long story, but it's going to circle back around. I remember growing up, my parents did okay. Like, they were middle class. Like, we were never hungry or anything, but money was tight. And if my parents fought, it was usually about money. And I remember there was a father in our Boy Scout troop. His name was Cam, who he did very well. He was a financial planner. And I always was like, oh, that guy buys his cars cash. Like, you can do that. You don't have to have a payment that mom and dad fight about whether we're spending $250 a month for the car or $300 for the car. And I remember, like, fuck, man, that's a dream of mine. And literally today, right before we got on this podcast, I went and picked up a Tesla, a Model Y, that I was able to pay cash for.
Nice.
I wired $61,000. I don't have a payment. I'm very worried about where the mortgage market is going to go this year, so I didn't want to have a $500 or $600 a month payment.
Yep.
And my first inclination was to not tell the team, because ooh, are they going to judge me? Are they going to be passive aggressive because I make enough money to pay for that car cash? Is that going to discourage them if they have a car payment? Like, my very first thing was to not share that dream out loud.
Yep.
And so I appreciate you giving me permission to share that dream out loud, because that's something that, I'm going to be 43 years old. Cam bought this badass minivan when we were Boy Scouts when I was probably 14 or 15. So this has been a dream of mine for 27 years, 26 years, to be able to buy a car all cash. And I was just about to completely shut up about it and hide it.
Yeah.
And that's you're telling me that's not the right thing to do as a leader.
And I would also say, give that full context. Don't just say I accomplished a dream, here it was. Give the birth of that dream when you found out about it, to then say, and so, hey, I just want to share, in spirit of trying to encourage you to go after yours, that I did this yesterday. I was pretty fired up about it. Because I think if you give the full story, it gives people like it humanizes the leader.
Right.
Right. And it makes them so much more relatable. I think that's real. That's awesome story for sure.
Thanks, man. So tell me, I want to hear some greatest hits. Like, tell me some of the most awesome dreams that you've seen accomplished because of what you've brought into these workshops and these seminars. And shameless promotion for Dane. If you run an organization or a sales team or you have a company, please hire Dane to come in, do the keynote, bring 100 copies of the books, and he'll do this seminar, the Dream Seminar, for your team, and then he'll take the leaders out to dinner to explain to them how to bring this culture into the ongoing process. Because I think all of us have seen the $20,000 keynote that some company paid for. They give a great message, and then it never works its way into the culture of the team. Yeah. So I appreciate that you also do the workshop with leadership to say, hey, all right, now this is how you bring it into the ongoing culture of the organization. Yep. This isn't a one and done. So give us some of the greatest hits of the dreams you've seen accomplished by your team members. Yeah.
So I just had, this Alex guy has been like, there's so many from him, but just buying his first property, buying his second. We now have 2 other individuals that are young, 21, 22, that bought their first properties. Another guy who's 19 that is getting pre-approved right now to go shopping. So there's now a theme where he's the leader of that, which has been really cool to see. Alex also ran a treadmill marathon last year because every marathon in, real marathon got canceled. And so it was on his 2020 list, and he kept putting it off, thinking like races will come back, right? I'll be able to find one, and he couldn't. So he just decided he was going to do a treadmill one. And it was the coolest thing ever. I convinced him. That was one of the first things on my dreams list that I did in 2013. So I told him, I was like, dude, it's going to be horrible on a treadmill by yourself. You need to set up a computer, throw on Zoom, let it be open for the whole time, and let me invite the whole team. And so he's like, this is dumb. He did it. And I stopped in probably 4 or 5 times. I got the CEO of our company to stop in. He's never met him in person. He texted me. He's like, you're never going to believe who stopped in, Bruce Mother effing Goodman. Nice. He was like, and so at the very end, there was 20 people when he crossed the, finish line. That guy's going to have that memory for his entire life. Right. Yeah. And that was such a cool thing. I just had a husband and wife team that went to London for Christmas. They are big foodies, and they hit 5 Michelin star restaurants in 5 days.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's been on their list. And so they did that. And what's funny now is they have a new thing on their list, which is dine at 100. Like they have a number, 100 Michelin star restaurants in the world at some point in their life.
Dude, that's something I wouldn't have thought about, but now that you've prompted me, the Michelin star restaurants, I really would love to eat at that. And my wife and I, when we first started dating, we watched this movie, the one where the Indian family moves in across the street from the Michelin star restaurant. And it's a really good culture movie.
Okay.
And my wife didn't know what a Michelin star restaurant was. We both grew up eating tacos in North Hollywood, And so we had this long conversation about a Michelin star. And then when we were in Mexico, we went to a Michelin star restaurant. It was a very cool experience. So I could see kind of reliving that from time to time. Yeah. And between LA and Vegas, there's probably 20. I looked this up, Chris. How many Michelin star restaurants are there in Los Angeles and Vegas? I've got to imagine there's at least a dozen in each city.
I would assume you have a lot.
Yeah. So that's big on our list. What else? Give me a couple other ones. You're motivating.
When I 10 in Vegas. I think about greatest hits, did he just say the number?
10. There's 10 just in Vegas.
Yeah. When I think about greatest hits, a lot of them are the small ones where somebody just took action on their health. They said, did he give you LA?
Yeah, 25 in LA.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So between the houses that we stay in, we've got 35 opportunities. So one a month for the next 3 years.
That's awesome. That's a good thing on your list. But the just seeing people make changes in their life, I think is awesome to say, hey, this person who's not into their health just signed up for a Tough Mudder that's 3 months away. So I know they're going to be working out. They're going to bring a different energy to work. Yeah. Hey, I just had somebody that I spoke to in Isaac's mastermind group. I did a virtual workshop for his team last Friday. And afterward, he was, or at that event, he was kind of introing me, and he talked about one of the things that he took action on since November was playing tennis regularly with his wife.
Nice.
Right. And so like something like that to me it's maybe isn't the greatest hits of like all these Michelin star restaurants, but that's him working on his health and his relationship.
Yeah.
Both in one thing that kind of took hold from us having a discussion about it late November. Yeah. Right. So it's like, those are the things that I'm like, that gets me fired up. For me, it was buying property, like buying my first mobile home park. That was on my list. And then it was, what I love about this is as we bring it to people every single year, what it does is you recognize like, oh, I accomplished these things. And so then we start to dream bigger because, it's hard to say, I want to have 500 doors without owning any.
Right.
Right. And so after buying my first one, it was, okay, well, I want to buy a second one. And then I want to do this and I want to do this. And so we make these and then we bring it to people in their planning. And so when I do business planning, it's not like, hey, what are you going to sell this year? It's, hey, let's see your dreams list. Let's get it out. What do you think you're going to get done? Okay, cool. And hey, what do you need to do to be able to do all those things?
Yeah. And that's the subtitle of your book, which I love. A Leader's Guide to Creating Teams of High Performers Who Achieve Extraordinary Incomes. And I think I could give the pitch for you, but I want to hear it in your words. When you create the culture and you create the dreams and you get people in line with what they want to accomplish, how does then that lead to the leader being able to create teams of high performers who achieve extraordinary outcomes?
So I think it's, when the focus is on the person, what we just went through this last year, you've probably heard it being called the great, what's it called? The Great Resignation.
Yeah.
Right. And why does that all happen? I mean, there's two things. Businesses have just totally been uprooted, right? Where we all work differently and you can work from home. And now all of a sudden, I lived in Minneapolis. And so prior to COVID, Minneapolis companies were competing with Minneapolis companies for Minneapolis talent, right? Now all of a sudden they get poached by an LA company or poached by a New York company, and they could just not have to uproot their family. So that's one. But the other thing is COVID got all of us this space, this whole reset button to say, to sit back, be at home, reevaluate important to me. Right. And in the way that I'm living, do I want to keep living that way? And so all of a sudden, there's a lot of people that said, screw this job. I don't want to do this anymore. Screw this company. I'm going to do this, and all sorts of different things. Right. So that's what we've been going through. And as if you've seen any of the research or the studies that have come out from the Great Resignation, number one thing that people are talking about is how they don't feel valued as a person. And what this does is exactly that. It values the person first. It's not how much do you produce. It's, hey, I want you to be alive here. And if you're not, I'm not interested in working with you because you're probably going to be a lump on a log. Right. I want to work with people that are living life at the highest level because, I mean, you were talking about the middle tier people, but those top people, you could go anywhere and make a lot of money.
Right.
Right. And especially in today's world. Yeah. Especially in today's world. It's like once somebody learns those lessons and learns those methods and systems to be able to be successful in a certain line of work, they could go jump ship and go anywhere. Right. So for me, it's, what makes working on my team unique? It's got to be something. And it can't just be, oh, we're making a lot of money.
Right.
It's got to be something else. And so this dreams thing, I feel like is it's the thing that allows me to talk about the person at a deep level instantly. Hey, how's your health? I know you signed up for that race, instead of how's the weekend, right? Yeah. Or, hey, how's your faith? I know that you on your dreams list this year talked about wanting to go to church regularly. How you doing on that? What a great conversation instead of, how about that football game this weekend?
Right.
Right. And so it allows people at work to go deep fast. And then it also allows you to have work conversations that are rooted in what's best for the person. And, what I think I've done naturally, this allows other people to do, such as, hey, I want you to work a little less so you can be more with your family. And you can accomplish more of your dreams. So let's figure out how you can sell more with less time. And that's the whole system of all of this, is like, how can we be more productive, more engaged? I would rather have somebody work 50% of the hours that they're working right now, but be 100% engaged, than work what they're working and be 50% engaged. And what I think this does is it brings that engagement to where people wake up and it's not, shit, I got to go to work. It's, I get to go to work and I got to produce because I got all these dreams that I'm lining up for this year.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Chris is going to have to fact check me on this. I think it's Topeka, Kansas is doing this thing where, because of the Great Resignation, they're basically putting out either a tax credit or like cash, where it was like, hey, Scott, if you move to Topeka, Kansas, because we want to build a thriving city with young professionals, we know you can now work from Zoom. We'll give you a $5,000 relocation bonus or like a $25,000 state tax credit or something like that if you move to Topeka, Kansas, because Topeka, Kansas is actually the capital of Kansas. Many people think it's Kansas City, but they're like, we have a dying city. Like, our populace is old. We've got to find a way to attract young talent to our city to, you know, frequent the businesses and open businesses. So, Chris, were you able to pull up that article? It's like, I think it's Topeka, Kansas offering like some credits or something.
Yeah, I think it's Topeka here. They have all kinds of little incentives to move there.
Yeah, it's like, what a great way.
15,000 of matching incentives by partnering with employers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and then I think for like high wage earners, there was like a tax credit where like, they're like, hey, we know that you can now work anywhere, which means you can live anywhere. Let's create this dream of a city of like young entrepreneurs.
That's awesome.
You know, people that frankly are making enough money where the tax credits matter, or people that need a fresh start, that need that, you know, $5,000 subsidy to pay the first couple months of rent and whatnot. I thought that was such a great way for like a government entity, which I tend to hate. The libertarian in me hates all government entities by nature, but what a great way for a government entity to dream bigger. I can't even believe I just said that sentence out loud.
There's the high performance incentive program provides a 10% corporate income tax credit on the qualified capital investment of an eligible company that pays above average wages and has a strong commitment to skills development for the workers.
So like if you're a high wage earner, they'll buy you off with tax incentives, and if you're a low wage worker, they'll buy you off with a relocation bonus.
Wow.
Like what a great way for, again, can't believe I'm going to be saying this out loud. What a great way for a government agency or a government entity to be thinking. And I'm like, maybe they read Dane's book.
I was wondering how Brad Johnson was getting all those guys to relocate from Chicago and whatnot to Topeka.
There you go.
You know, right. It's got to be this. He's probably floating that over to him.
Now we know. That's amazing. Cool, man. A couple questions just to end this up. You know, I always there's such a breadth of knowledge from you on running businesses, the Dream Machine, the book, all this kind of stuff. What's the question I forgot to ask? Like, it could be about your family. It could be about something in the book that I forgot to recover because I'm in all honesty, I'm only about halfway through it. Or maybe it's just some business lesson that you've learned over COVID. Like, what's the question I forgot to ask that Dane's like, man, I wish people would ask me this on a podcast or an interview?
That's a great question. I think a good question to ask on this is, how hard or how easy is it to start this at my business? Because I think that one of the reasons that I wrote the book on this is because I feel strongly in that this is not one of those new operating system and this massive overhaul where the owner would, this is not meant to be another thing to micromanage. And so what I love about this is it's an organic thing. Every single team has somebody that this resonates with massively. And that person is all you need. And so, you know, to answer my own question of how easy or how hard is it for somebody to get started with this, it's super simple. And the idea is that book is enough for somebody to be able to look at it and say, okay, I can probably at least get this started on my team. And I think that when somebody just starts the conversation around it and they start living it themselves, they're going to notice that some all-stars on their team start picking up with this and start loving it. There's no pushback.
So if I'm like more, even as a leader, if I'm more of like the systems guy and the grind guy and whatnot, can I appoint a dream manager on my team?
Yeah.
Like, hey, Ann, this is right up your alley. Can you please bring this into the weekly meeting? And can you please be like our dream cheerleader? Is it okay for me to kind of abscond my responsibility and make somebody on the team the dream person?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's not hard to do. I do think that whoever, like, let's say it's on your team and you have an admin person who's like, hey, this is on your task list. I think that works. but none of it works unless the leader is going after their own dreams. Right. So if you're like, oh, no worries, I'm doing it myself with my wife, then this absolutely works.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's one. There's one other because it's a business book. It's not, I don't talk a lot about like with the impact that it's had on my relationship with my wife, but as a, fellow front row dad, that's something that I think was selfishly when I started this with my girlfriend, now wife, it was so that we could implement it in my business. Right. Yeah. I didn't necessarily, it wasn't what I was talking about, but that, I wanted to implement this. And so we started doing it. This has been like the glue of our relationship in such a big way. And the reason is, there's this relationship that forms, obviously you get married. And then the idea though, is we're going to support each other. Well, what are you supporting? Are you just supporting them going to work and supporting that they want to go do this? Or, what are you really supporting? And what I found with the dream stuff is that my wife and we know fully what we were supporting in the other person. And so I've got my list. She's got her list. At the end of each year, we go through our, year-end review. And basically we go through our dreams that we accomplished that previous year. We go through our Google calendars, and we go through our iPhone photos, because there's so many photos that just go in there to die. And we pull out all the highlights from our year. And that allows us to get in a good place. We get out our dreams list, and then we plan the next year. And we both share, like, these are the dreams that I want to get done. These are the dreams I want to get done. And so we can support both financially, support whatever. And it's a total, like, one of the dreams on my list was to see all my favorite sports teams win a championship. Okay. So I'm a Wisconsin guy. So I'm hoping the Packers, I might be headed to LA in a couple of weeks because it's on my list. But the Bucks won the national NBA championship this year, right? So a buddy of mine has season tickets. He's got finals tickets. Game 6, they can win. It's back in Milwaukee. It's a Tuesday night. Tickets are expensive. My book is about to come out. I'm in the heat of my busy season with work. All the reasons not to go. And my wife was like, "Are you going to go?" And I said, I don't think I can. And she said, "Well, are they going to be in the championship next year?" And I said, she knew it was on my list. And I said, "Well, I mean, I don't know." She goes, "You have to go." And I said, and she goes, "You have to go. You're going to hate yourself if they win and you weren't there and you had the opportunity. You have to go." And I felt like it was one of the first times that I've gone to so many different things where in the back of my head, there was guilt of like, my wife, I'm out with the guys and she's not here, or she's got the kids, whatever, right? I'm spending X amount of our money on this. But that I was like fully present in the moment, loving every bit of it with zero guilt, because I knew I had her support because of the dream stuff. And it's both ways. So I think that doing this with your significant other is as important, if not more, than, anything that we do at work.
It's so funny because you and I are both familiar with the book, The Family Board Meeting from Front Row Dads, of like, once a month or once a quarter, taking your kids individually and planning a day just around them and letting them pick the thing they want to do. And what's so funny is, my kids are 3 and 5. They're about to turn 4 and 6. Their dreams are, "Oh, Daddy, I get to pick today. I just want to go to the trampoline house with you." And it's like, it's $20. It's $20 for 4 hours of free play in the trampolines. I am terrified of like destroying my ACL, so I kind of like bounce on the sideline very slowly. And luckily, my kids are small enough; they don't understand that adults could do backflips and go really crazy on the trampolines. So they kind of let me get away with just like bouncing over here on the side, where I'm like, I really want to go to Jiu-Jitsu tomorrow. Don't want to blow out my ACL. So, but the point is that bringing this into your family life. It's going to get more expensive when they become teenagers. But for now, I can accomplish dreams that my kids have just by asking them and spending $20, $40. My son asked him, "All right, what do you really want to do today, buddy?" And he's like, "I want to go back to that place where we saw the big lobster." We took him out for like crab legs and lobster one night. So it was $100 for lunch, but he hasn't stopped talking about it for 3 months. Every time somebody's like, "Oh, what food do you like?" He's like, "Ooh, I like that place where you break the things open and you eat them." Talking about crab legs. And it's like, it's amazing what you can accomplish with your spouse, on your own, with your kids for such a low dollar amount.
I love it. And what you're teaching your kids is that you can do what you want. Like what we're equipping our kids with this idea is that anything is possible. Nobody else is in charge of you. Like, you can figure things out. And what I also think is the same thing of dream achieving, call it, right? So I've got this big list and I want to get these things done. It's the same part of your brain that's used to solve problems. So for instance, what's the problem? The problem is I want to do this dream and it costs money and it needs my time. So how am I going to figure it out? Well, if we're constantly solving problems in our personal life that are positive, how do I go on this trip? How do I buy this property? How do I lose weight? How do I get more fit? How do I get a black belt? And we teach our kids how to do this. They're so much more equipped that when an actual problem pops up, they're like, I know how to do this. Right. And they can work themselves through that.
That's great, man. Last question, I'll let you go because I know your time is valuable, but we might be having a conversation about bringing this exercise into our coaching event at some point in the future. What's your favorite movie and why? I'm a big movie junkie, so I feel like I can get so much out of people with their favorite movie. And by the way, I don't care if you have a 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, we can go through all of them. But what's your favorite movie and why?
So, God, this is tough. Forever. So I'm probably going to discredit myself a little bit.
Okay. Just don't say Showgirls. As long as you don't say Showgirls, we're still friends.
All right, never mind. No. If I had to say one, and it's been the same one forever, but it's basically any Will Ferrell movie. And if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Old School.
So great.
So it gives you a little taste of my tasteless humor, but that'd probably be number one. I also I recently have rewatched and loved Django Unchained.
Amazing movie.
I love that.
Amazing movie.
And then Pulp Fiction is always in there.
Yeah.
I usually watch that once a year, and it's just like, it's such a good movie.
It's so funny because every time somebody brings up a Quentin Tarantino movie, I'm like, oh yeah, that could be my 1 through 8. Like Reservoir Dogs is definitely my top 5.
Yep.
And Reservoir Dogs was filmed super low budget in Eagle Rock, California, right where I grew up. So it's like the diner where they're having the opening scene of Reservoir Dogs. I've eaten their breakfast burrito there 100 times, and the weird looking church when they're running down the alley is like this Chinese church that's painted orange that's in Eagle Rock that I walked by a million times growing up to go get cigarettes from my grandma. So it's like that movie has a special place in my heart. And it's funny you mentioned Old School. There's a scene in there where Vince Vaughn ends up in a room with a gal and she's hitting on him and he's like, well, I'm married and I'm happily married, but just in case she gets hit by a bus, can I get your phone number and I'll give you a call if that happens? And I've told that to my wife before. We'll be sitting having a drink at a casino or something, and she'll be like, oh, that guy's pretty good looking. I'm like, yeah, she's pretty good looking. I'm like, just in case you get hit by a bus, can I go get her phone number? And the first time I said that, she didn't get the reference because it had been years since she saw the Old School, and she kind of looked at me and I'm like, it's from the movie, remember, with Will Ferrell? And then she started laughing. So now I can say it as a joke. The first time it went over like a fart in church.
I train 18 to 22-year-olds forever. My movie references from like Anchorman, all the Will Ferrell movies, they hit so well. And now I'll say something and it's just absolute cricket. So I'm like, all right, well, I can't use them.
By the way, there's a scene in Anchorman, and now that I've told you, you'll go back and rewatch the movie and you'll see it. There's a scene in Anchorman where he's at his big mahogany desk and he's like giving a talk or whatever, and it's not a particularly funny line. I think I was pretty drunk in the Army when that came out. I saw the movie the first time, and I start laughing hysterically. And my buddy turns to me, he's like, I don't get the joke. I'm like, he didn't say anything. I'm like, look at the desk. On the desk, there's a 4-piece Rubik's Cube. So all you have to do is spin it once to solve it. And it's like, there's a 4-piece Rubik's Cube on the corner of his desk. Like, he could feel so smart every day by solving a Rubik's Cube by just spinning it once. And I'm laughing my ass off. And my buddy's like, what? Or how drunk are you? I didn't get the joke. And I'm like, no, look at the Rubik's Cube. It's just one
that's
piece.
Awesome.
So, there's every time I rewatch that movie, I get like a new joke out of it.
Oh, it's dumb humor, but I love it.
Cool, man. Well, Dane, hey, bro, thanks for being on. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see you at the next Front Row Dads retreat, or maybe sooner if I can get you out coaching some of my loan officers. And I think this will be a great exercise to go through with a bunch of our realtors. So I appreciate you being on, and thanks. Congratulations on all the books. I know you're selling a massive amount of copies, and you're doing dream workshops all over the country and by Zoom and whatnot. So we'll make sure to get the word out there. And anybody that's lasted this long, please, you know what you're supposed to do. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment for Dane. And Dane, how do people get in touch with you if they need your dream workshop or they need a copy of your book?
Yeah, easy is my Instagram is basically what we've been using so far, just Dane Espegard. Also on LinkedIn, same thing. And then my website is daneespegard.com, or they can go to thedreammachinebook.com as well.
Amazing. Congratulations, dude. And we'll have you on in a few months, have you back to talk about all the success and what the dreams you've accomplished this year are.
Would love it.
Talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Scott.